John, how would you come up with your list of critical assets in your organization? What would you say?
I'd have to contact the folks who are associated with those assets, and I don't know if they have a list today. If they don't, start drilling down in and finding out what those are.
Yep. So some of the, and you said contact the folks who maintain that. Well, were those technicians or business owners? Who generally maintains that list?
I think both.
Both?
Yeah.
So what you'll find is, and this is kind of the point I was getting at here, is you'll find that there are a lot of people who have inputs on what your critical assets are. It's certainly the guy who has the spreadsheet that says server 1, serial number, et cetera, et cetera. That's in there. So really technicians and support staff will have the hardware and software inventory. But also your business area, your process managers will have lists of things that are critical to their area. And certainly at the top, senior executives will have some notion of what's important to them. And frequently you'll see that there's a difference between those three levels. So the technician's going to go, well, all of my desktops are important because if one of them breaks, you know, Sally can't do her job and Bob over there is going to get mad because he can't get on email. The business owner may say that the desktops, yeah, those are important, but really I've got a set of servers over here and my iPad are the really critical things in the organization that we have to keep up and running. And the senior executive may say, well, that's all fine and good in that business area, but I have 6 business units I need to manage. That business unit is not important. But this one over here, say commercial insurance for an insurance company, this one is absolutely critical. And so my critical assets are the servers and the desktops that support that particular function. So what you'll get is a whole bunch of input here. How do you get it? Well, you can go out and interview. You can interview the senior execs, you can interview the business owners or the process owners to come up with, here's what our critical assets are. You can do research. So again, look at the spreadsheets of the asset inventory that you've got. You can hold workshops. Hey everybody, we're doing a asset valuation workshop today. I need 4 hours of everybody's time. Bring your inventory lists. And we're going to sit down and talk about what's most important to us as an organization. And so you bring people in from across the organization. They all sit down in one room, and they get to battle it out on what's most important. That way you, as the risk assessment person, don't have to adjudicate that yourself. You let them battle it all out. You can also do surveys. So send out simple questionnaires to everybody. Which one of these you choose, completely up to you. And it goes, which one you pick should be based on what you think is going to be most effective for reaching into these people right here. So you might find that your senior executives, you can't get their attention for more than 5 minutes. 5 minutes might be enough time to do a survey. So you can't get them into a 4-hour workshop, but they can fill out a 10-question document that says what's most important to you. You know, the technicians and the support staff, you might have to hold a workshop on that because you've got 100 technicians, each of them with their own opinion about what's important. And again, you lock them in a room, you toss in the grenade, and you see what happens. And you let them battle it out for what's most important, and then you get the output of that. Secret strategy number 1. Let other people do your work for you. But you might find that any one of these is more applicable to, you know, your audience. So pick whichever one you think is going to be right for you. But that's the data call. So then what you want to do is come up with some type of business value on those resources. So what's the true value of that, that server or that particular system or that web application? And you want to look at this because your whole risk assessment process should be based on criticality. What's most important to my business? If one of the primary data feeds into this process is my assets, and I don't have a good understanding of what's critical with those assets, what am I going to do? Or what will I end up doing? Wasting time on, say, the desktop that has no bearing on business impact when I should have been concentrating on, you know, a server or a web application. So having a good fundamental understanding of the value of these assets will help you prioritize and focus really on what's most important to your business. And again, that's kind of the key tenet of risk assessment and risk management is focus on the things that are important to you. Everything else, worry about that later when you have the time, if you have the time. So as far as valuation goes, make sure you consider things like cost. How much did it cost us to buy that particular server or replace it? But don't forget about things like technical complexity, control procedures, subjective valuation, like the CEO believes this is the most important thing in the organization. Well, he must have a rationale for that. If it's an irrational decision that that's the most important thing, well, you still kind of have to account for that because the CEO is going to toss out the whole risk management plan if his particular objectives aren't met. So make sure you consider other things, not just the cost on it, but based on the interviews that you've done, really, what's the true value of this asset? And again, you can express it in terms of dollars, or you can express it in terms of relativeness. Critical asset, level 10, is this server. Desktop in the library, maybe that's critical asset, level 1, or something like that. Again, all you're doing here is using the criticality of these assets, or the value of these assets, as an input to prioritizing the risk assessment process. Bottom line question here is, if it breaks, how bad is it? If it's really bad, it better be a critical asset. If we don't care if it breaks, well, you better not be doing a risk management process on something that you don't care if it doesn't break, because you're wasting your time. Business objectives. So in the previous slide, we talked about business objectives and what's most important to your business. How do you determine that? Well, the real question is, what is important to us as a business? So in order for our business to be successful, what do we do? Insurance company, again, that might be we sell policies, we service policies, we pay claims. And if we can't do any of those three things, we are broken as a business. And so coming up with the idea of what your business objections or business objectives are, you might determine that our reputation is most important to us. Our productivity, our ability to service our clients is most important to us. Health and safety of our employees is most important to us. Making sure our customers don't go off to competitors, that's important to us. How do you come up with what's important to a business? Who do you interview? Who do you ask? Well, really, this comes down to senior managers, your C-suite level, your vice president level, that sort of people. Who's important or what's important to this business? And so generally, you can ask them, what do we need to do to be successful? And they'll tell you, this is what we do, this is what our business does. You can take that and start looking at, okay, here's what the business objectives are. How do those assets that we just talked about fit into that? And if you find there's a disconnect between what you thought was a critical asset and those assets being able to meet these objectives, you go back through the asset valuation process again. So generally, start with an understanding of what your business objectives are. That'll help you guide the rest of this process. So once you've done that, the next thing you want to do is describe impact to the organization based on those objectives that you had. So if you said reputation is the number one business objective we had and maintaining our reputation, well, what would bad be? Bad to a reputation impact or reputation objective might be we had, a Twitter trend last week that said, we have no customer service ability. Our customer service stinks. We don't pay our claims on time. That sort of thing. That might be a significant, impact to reputation. If we look at the example that we have here on slides in terms of service availability, let's say we have a e-commerce server, and our business objective is 100% availability, meaning if I can't have this e-commerce server up and running all the time, I'm sunk as a business. And so our objective there is to be general good service availability, the impact, like a high impact consideration might be that server is destroyed, is completely gone. Well, what kind of impact would that have on the business objective of availability? Pretty high, right? That server's not there anymore. It's not partially broken, it's not slightly affected, it is completely gone, which means our availability goes to zero. That is a pretty high impact. Medium impact might be something like we have 2 hours of disruption. We had to push a patch last night, it brought the system down, it took 2 hours to reboot it, but now it's all working. What level impact is that? Might be a medium level impact. Low level impact might be something, more than 2 hours, or downtime was less than 2 hours, or something like that. So little or no effort is required to recover it. So what you're looking at now is business objectives and impact to the business if something happens to those objectives. Let's switch back to assets here. And again, you have business objectives, right? You probably do some type of service to meet those business objectives. As part of that service, you have certain processes that you run to do those services. How do you do these processes which provide those services which meet your business objectives? You have things like people, information, technology, facilities, but you have these certain assets that do these processes which provide that service, which meet those business objectives. So follow that process all the way through. Let's see if I can switch over here. So if you look at this completely, you start at the top with an understanding of what your business objectives are, right? The business objectives might be, like we said, service availability, reputation, something like that. So you have services which meet these particular business objectives. So I might be offering, say, an e-commerce. Buy now, for lack of a better word. I might also have customer care. And my writing is terrible. So you might have customer care services. How do the services relate to the business objectives? Any ideas?
You want it to be available?
Yes, your business objectives will relate directly to your services. Your services should be able to be described in terms of business objectives. Why do we do customer care? Because we care about reputation. Why do we provide this e-commerce, buy now capability? Well, because we want 100% service availability. We want to streamline the process for people to buy stuff from us. So there ought to be a direct link between these. So what are my processes now? So our process for the e-commerce buy now application might be something like making sure that the thing is patched, making sure we do intrusion monitoring on it, making sure that the products actually get loaded into the system, make sure that when people buy stuff, that order gets translated to the warehouse. There's any number of processes that go into this. So now the question is, what do you need to do to meet those processes? What do you need to be able to do those processes? Well, you have people, you have information, you have technology, you have facility, you have assets that allow you to do those processes, which allow you to meet those services, which allow you to realize those business objectives. So by doing this process, you should be able to backtrack all the way down to something like this, where you have people, tech, info. So in this, in my asset list, I will have people. I have Bob, I have Sally, I have Jim, whatever. In my tech list, I might have server 1 and server 2. What I'm getting at here is now being able to make a link between Bob and service availability, Sally and service availability, or the server based on the reputation or something like that. So what I'm getting at here is the ability to prioritize people, technology, information, and facilities back to your business objectives. This will let you say, Bob is more important than Sally. It's a tough call to make, believe me, when you're starting to prioritize people. Nobody likes to do that, but within risk management, you have to do it. Server 1 is more important than server 2. And people will scream about this because, well, my e-commerce server is more important than your e-commerce server. Well, how do you adjudicate between that? Go back to your business objectives. If one server does service availability and the other one doesn't meet that objective, which one's more important? Server 1. And so you basically repeat that process for information and technology, facilities, and people. And that's how you link what's really and truly important down here is you go back to what are my business objectives and how do the things that I use down here, my assets, how do those relate to the business objectives? And that's how you do a perhaps less subjective analysis of it. So instead of everybody weighing in on an opinion and it being a very, heartened discussion about, well, why is Bob more important than Sally? You can link it all back to factual statements on they support these business objectives. These objectives came from our CEO or from our C-suite level. That's how we know Bob is more important than Sally or Sally's more important than Bob. So follow up what that discussion just was about what assets are used to provide that system, that service.